It is with great pleasure, but really great pleasure because she's also a traveling companion and an excellent hypnotherapist and a wonderful person that I introduce, Yvonne Smith. And I would like to read an introduction for her. Have you ever wondered what is in your subconscious? As an internationally recognized expert, certified hypnotherapist Yvonne Smith probes deep into her subject's subconscious to find the cause of their unexplained stress and release them from the trauma many had needlessly suffered. After Yvonne received her hypnotherapy certificate, she decided to specialize in post-traumatic stress disorder cases. After Yvonne opened her own practice, she noticed that many of the subjects referred to her by medical doctors and psychologists described similar experiences during hypnotherapy, close encounter or abduction experiences. So she founded the Close Encounters Resource Organization, known as CERO Support Group. She then fell into the good company of Bud Hopkins, David Jacobs, and the late Dr. John Mack. And the four of them traveled together on a lecture circuit. Yvonne has lectured at MIT, other universities, conferences throughout the United States, and from Brazil to Europe, and made dozens of television appearances in the United States, most recently appearing on the Montel Williams Show and participating in a 6-hour taping for the History Channel. And after delivery glitches this past week, Yvonne's first book, called Chosen, Reflections of UFO Abduction Through Hypnotherapy, finally made its way, and it's debuted here at the conference. Chosen, which forms the basis of her presentation, contains startling transcripts of subjects' recollections of alien abductions, unblocked from the hidden memory by regressive hypnotherapy. Yvonne's candid exposure of their unlocked memories will rock the very core of your own reality. Let's welcome Yvonne Smith.
Well, I guess I might. Gee, thank you, Paula. And just so the audience knows, I wasn't going to let you show me up, so I wear sparkles today. After she wore her Madonna and sparkly jeans, I'm wearing sparkles today, so thank you, Paula. Hello, everybody. I can't see most of you, but I just want to welcome everybody and thank you so much for coming in after lunch and listening to my talk. I'm very, very excited to be here today. I first of all would like to thank, of course, the Browns, Bob, Nikki, and Heather, who are doing and have done for the past several years a wonderful job. Please give them a round of applause. They're wonderful. I also I want to thank a couple people, of course. My mentor, who's here, and I don't know if he's in the audience now, but Bud Hopkins, who I met many years ago. I've been doing this for 17 years, and I saw with my mother one of his lectures at the when they were doing the Whole Life Expos a few years ago in Los Angeles, and I was so impressed with him and his work. I began studying hypnotherapy and working with several cases, but I want to thank Bud, and I'm glad that he's here. So thank you very much, Bud, for all of your help and support over the years. And you know, I want to thank especially, and they don't get the recognition that they should, but this group of people makes the speakers look absolutely professional and wonderful. And I want to thank the AV crew that's behind this curtain, because they are also professionals and very helpful. And Mel and the crew back there, I want to thank you for all of your help. Please give them a hand. I also want to thank the person who introduced me, Paula Harris, who's a dear friend and colleague. And it was Paula who, the last time I was in Rome, I'm grateful for her good kick in the rear to tell me, Yvonne, you've got to go back to the States and finish your book. And because of her prompting and her encouragement, I did just that, as well as my manager, John Loggins, who has been a driving force behind this book project. So there's just people that are behind the scenes that I just am very grateful for. So thank you. Yes, give him a round of applause. And after a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, I finally, after 17 years of research, but of course when I first became a researcher, I did not plan on writing a book or doing television interviews, or I had no idea what this was going to bring. But this project has been in the works for about 10 years, and I'm very, very happy to finally debut it here at the Laughlin Conference, which is, this is one of the best conferences in the world. Like I said, they're very, very organized, and so here it is. And I'm going to be talking about some of the subjects that I chose to be in this book. Over the last 17 years, and I think we could put up the first slide, please. Okay, there's the cover of Chosen. And I wanted to share that with you, and I'll go to the next one. Okay. So the topic of my talk is my work as a hypnotherapist. Over the last 17 years, I mainly have worked with post-traumatic stress disorder. And these are people who have suffered a trauma. And it could be any type of a trauma that suddenly happens to somebody. For example, you heard Ann Andrews the other day, and you saw those terrible slides of her son's car when he got into that terrible accident with his wife. Well, it reminded me, of course, of my work. I do a lot of work with car accident victims. We're all in our cars every day. And for example, someone, as Anne mentioned, they become very, very stressed and filled with anxiety. They're afraid to get back in their car, and when they do, they're afraid to drive down this particular stretch of road or freeway or intersection. And I've worked with this one particular person where she would have to go through the intersection every day, and I used some desensitizing techniques so that she feels once again safe to get back into her car and drive, because she needed to do that. She was a photographer, and she needed to use her car and get in her car every day and drive to appointments. So I'm going to be presenting transcripts and drawings of subjects' recollections of alien contact unblocked from hidden memory by regressive hypnotherapy. How do I do this? I probe deeply into the subject's subconscious to find the cause of their unexplained anxiety and fear. And why do I do this? To, first of all, release them from their trauma. As I began working with cases of alien abduction, contact, experiences, whichever term you feel comfortable using, I just happen to use the term in my title, UFO Abductions. The reason for this book is to catch the attention and to keep catching the attention of mainstream media. I know Bud was talking about mainstream media yesterday and how we must present ourselves. Well, I've been doing this. This is what I think about when I do television and radio interviews. And so I think the general public seems to be familiar with the term UFO abductions, but I may change that in the second printing to UFO contact. We'll see. The transcripts taken from subjects are the actual transcripts without any editing or changes of the subject's true grammar or lack of it, or colorful language. So in the book, I've presented these actual transcripts to give the reader an idea of what the person actually goes through, how very real this is. When I began working with these cases, People who've had UFO sightings or contact also were suffering from nightmares or recurring dreams, a fear, a displaced fear or anxiety, flashbacks, depression. And many of them were so tunnel vision, I'll call it, with their experience that it took away from their concentration where it was affecting their work. So I found that even though we're dealing with the UFO subject, these people who had abductions, experiences, contact with alien craft and their occupants are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder many times. So those people out there, the general public, whether they like it or not, the UFO subject is real. And I think we're past the nuts and bolts of, are there craft out there? We've had enough sightings. We've had enough data. We've had enough film footage. Whether they like it or not, UFO abductions are real. It's a physical event, and people are physically feeling the effects of the contact. And this is why I do my work. And many of you, I don't know how familiar any of you are with hypnotherapy. I know it's come under the gun many times in the media and in shows that the person doing regressive hypnosis is leading the subject into an abduction experience. Now, why anyone would want to make a story like that up is beyond me. And if they think that these people are hoaxing because they want to profit from the contact or abductions, well, they're wrong and they don't know what they're talking about. Because I find it very difficult to ask some of my clients to come on to do an interview with me because they would rather remain anonymous. They're not in it for money, they're not in it for fame. What they want are answers. This is why I established Close Encounter Resource Organization, CERO, 15 years ago, to provide a safe haven for people who've had contact to come together once a month and talk about their experiences and what's happened to them, so they're not feeling so alone. I know many people say, I feel all alone with this. But hypnotherapy is a valid and useful tool for this work. It's been recognized since 1958 to reduce pain, anxiety, stress, and PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It has been recognized since the 50s by the American Medical Association, American Psychological Association, the Mayo Clinic, Harvard Medical School, American Cancer Society, the Lancet. And one of the psychiatrists at Stanford had stated, the power of hypnotic trance can no longer be disputed. Now we just have to use it. So those of us who are trained in this work are using it. And I want to share some of the cases with you. This is a very, very small handful of the hundreds of cases that I've worked with. And I put up some transcripts just so you could see what is in the book, the work that I do. I was going to bring along some of the audio tapes so you could actually just feel and hear the emotion of some of the subjects. But this case is very interesting. This case is a double abduction of two women who were attending a MUFON meeting in Southern California back in the late 80s. And they had no idea. They both were in the car together. They both at the same time spotted a very bright light and thinking it was an airplane. But the other one, one of the women said it couldn't be an airplane. Her father was in the Air Force. She said they're not supposed to fly that low. And the next memory they had was of them getting off of the off-ramp and going to a grocery store. They said they have to go to the grocery store before they get home. They're supposed to be home by 10 o'clock. They walked into the grocery store, nobody was there. It was the week of Thanksgiving, and they thought, this is really strange. Why is the store so empty? It's not even 10 o'clock yet. As they walked out of the store, Lacey noticed a clock over the door, and she was horrified when she said, Loretta, it's 12 o'clock, it's 12 midnight. And they had no recollection. As many of you here are very familiar with the data that's been reported and the cases, of course, but I speak to many audiences that are not versed in this work. So I don't think I have to explain missing time to you, the term that Bud had coined many years ago, but it is a continuous time. People don't feel that they've lost any time. They think that they're continuing on with their journey when it's 2 hours later. But this particular case, for months, they did not talk to each other after that incident. I find that to be very common even in families where something happens, they spot a craft, they have a sighting, you have missing time, 1 or 2 hours have passed, and they don't talk about it. They even avoided seeing each other until one of their friends was a researcher for MUFON in Thousand Oaks, California, Alice Levy. She's given me permission, of course, to use her name. And they told her what happened, and so she contacted me, and I began working with the two women. But just in this one particular excerpt, Lacey found herself on the table, didn't know how she got there, and she couldn't move her arms, and she's in distress right now. I'm laying down. It feels like I'm laying down. I'm trying to move my arms. Something is standing at the end of my feet. And she starts, this is when she begins to get very agitated. As you can see, I'm asking her to describe. She's crying. She exclaims, they put something in my hand, and it's holding me down, pushing down on my hand, and crying and hysterical. Of course, the transcripts, it's really not like listening to the tapes, but I've written in there when they're crying and they're frightened. As you heard Jim and Charles the other day both describe how terrified they both felt when they underwent hypnotic regression. It was a terror. Not everybody reacts the same, but initially in many of these experiences, it is very frightening. That's why they contact someone like myself. And this is just more of the transcript. And when I was listening to Charles the other day, and he was saying, I'm lying on the table, and he showed the slide, and he said, I'm trying to scream out to my friends to help me out of this, and he said nothing was coming out. And I thought, my gosh, I put this in my presentation without knowing that from Charles. But Lacey had spotted her friend Loretta. She's laying down, and now they're telling her something. This is at one point during their whole ordeal. They don't got mouths. Like I said, I'm not correcting any of these transcripts for grammar or colorful language. I'm trying to scream. I know I'm screaming. I can hear it in my head, and nothing's coming out. And yes, in this one excerpt, which I thought was interesting, she later on spotted, they were in the same room, and she saw Loretta standing where she described as a window. She said she's looking at a window, they're standing with her, they're telling her something, and it seems like she's looking out. I can see her back. I think it's a window. It's black to me. Now this is what, during the course of my work with these two women, and I believe I worked with them for a couple years, Loretta came to me, and this was a sample of some wallpaper. And in the book I describe it, she wrote in her journal all her thoughts during before the regression and after the regression, she kept a journal. But she said that one day she went to the store. She was Christmas shopping, and she said she spotted this wallpaper, and she said she emptied everything out of her cart, and she put every single roll of this wallpaper in her cart. And she even asked the manager, do you have any in the back, the stock room? And he did. And she said she went home and she decorated her entire refrigerator in this wallpaper. She had no idea why she was doing this. She said, Yvonne, my kitchen is antiques and Coca-Cola antique signs, and she said it has nothing to do with the stars and the star system, UFOs. She goes, except for my refrigerator. And she said it looks like a three-dimensional star system. And when I began pulling out transcripts as I was writing this book, I read through these transcripts and Lacey's description of Loretta looking out the window with the beans around her. And at one point during the transcripts, Lacey was describing that they were showing her something out the window as well. So Loretta was still not conscious of the fact that she may have been shown a star system, and it reminded me of the Betty Hill case. Of course, this is not as detailed as the star map that Betty Hill did. However, it convinces me that something was shown to Loretta, and this was deep in her subconscious. So I wanted to include that for you. This is the case of Mary. I've worked with Mary for many years, a professional woman, a psychologist. She came to me because she remembered a couple of very strange occurrences, but she recalled that her brother would scream out that there are three beings looking in the window, three bald men. He didn't call them beings, bald men looking in the window. And she remembered her brother every once in a while missing from his bed, and one time their parents couldn't find him anywhere in the house until he showed up. He just appeared in the kitchen. So she drew this to show me what her brother was talking about, but it wasn't until, and I know you've heard this story many times because I have, it wasn't until she went to a bookstore and she saw the cover of Communion that she said it triggered something. And she took the book home and read it through, and she realized after seeing the cover of the book that, my God, I think that's what my brother was talking about. Unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to work with her brother. He had committed suicide. We don't know if this was connected to perhaps his experiences, and he didn't know how to deal with it. But I wanted to share that with you. So she drew this when she first came to me. Now, I wanted to also present this case of Mary, and I have not presented it for a few years. I kept it away from the public's eye, but she experienced something that she felt was very strange. She was taken, this is one of the sessions, she was taken on board, and she was escorted down the hallway with a little guy. And she said previously to this, of course, I'm just using excerpts. I see these cases along the wall, and I asked her, and at the time I had not heard of other experiences like this, but she described them as cases are horizontal, maybe 6 feet long, and there's something green in it, kind of like antifreeze. And she's very articulate. So Mary in hypnosis is just, she makes my work so easy, and she's just describing in detail, she's very detailed, what these cases look like. She goes, there's tubing going into it. I think I see 3 of these things. But at this point, she became highly agitated. And Mary doesn't get agitated easily. Oh my God, he wants me to get into that thing. Oh my God, I'm naked. There are others around me now. I don't know where they came from, and nobody is saying anything, but I get the idea I'm supposed to get into that tub. I can't really move. And then, she pauses, and she realizes she's in the water. I asked her to describe it, of course, using techniques to desensitize her of the fear, to continue going on, but without feeling the fear. What does the water feel like, Mary? It's like antifreeze, sort of slippery. I can open my eyes in it, and I don't know why I do that. And she's becoming agitated, and of course, I'm just asking her to describe, trying to move her away from the fear. As you see, there's a couple of expletives in the next one. Oh, I put my hand up, and there's a lid on it, and she keeps with the expletives because at this point she's extremely agitated. I'm trying to get up to where the space is, and there isn't any. They're going to kill me. I'm trying to push the glass, but I can't seem to move very much, and her agitation is increasing, and she's convinced she's going to drown. At this point in the session, I remember Mary's face turning completely white. Her lips were very pale, and she just kept saying, I'm going to drown, I'm going to drown. And I, of course, reminding her, Mary, you did not drown, you're safe, you're here, just tell me what's happening. And then finally she says, oh God, I had to breathe, and I did. Well, this case reminded me, and Paola Harris the other day in her talk mentioned the James Cameron movie, The Abyss. And I went on vacation with my boys one time skiing up at Lake Arrowhead, and they went skiing, and I stayed in and was watching a movie while I was doing some work, and the movie was The Abyss. And it was right after I'd done a session, one of the sessions with Mary. And I had no idea what this movie was about, but when the one character, Bud, was, they put the suit on him, and they filled the helmet with the liquid, and he started breathing. I mean, I dropped everything, and I said, oh my God. And I said, I've got to find out if this is real or is this just Hollywood? Well, I had found out that the Navy had been using this technique, this underwater breathing technique, perfluorocarbon. I know, I didn't write down the full name, but it's in the book, of course, and because I wanted to share that experience with you, that I was just, I was speechless when I saw that part in the movie. So I researched the breathing of the liquid, and I shared this with Mary. So it also reminded me, and I made a comparison to the Betty Andreasson case. I know many of you are very familiar with her case. She was also, but she a little bit different. She was seated in some type of a chair with an enclosure. There were tubes going in that enclosure, and she was made to breathe this liquid. She too thought she was going to drown, but I have a whole section on it. But I asked Mary, "Are your eyes open?" "No, I'm kind of relaxed." And she started relaxing her. Later on, her color started becoming more normal. "I wonder if I'm drowning." She was so relaxed, she thought maybe she was dying. And as always, I have my clients draw pictures before their sessions, what they remember consciously, and after the course of their hypnotic regression. Some of the drawings that you'll see are professional pieces of artwork done by Steve Neal, who I worked with over the years, and I've used his beautiful illustrations in my talk. But this was done by Mary, and this was her in the tank, and you see the piping that she shows. And I think I forgot to bring my laser pointer, but you see the piping above the casing there, and this is when it was filling up with the liquid. Let me see. All right, this is another case, missing time case that I featured. Worked with John for many years. He's an integral part, very important part of CERO, one of the early members. But he was driving up north in 1981, I believe, and he spotted, as you can see, a craft over a bridge as he was driving. This was New Year's Eve. He was driving up north to be with his girlfriend to bring in the new year. He spotted this object. He thought it was very strange because it was low and no noise, and he thought, I'm going to pull over. What is this thing? And he remembers pulling over, but the next thing he remembers is his hands on the steering wheel, and he felt groggy as if he had just awakened from a nap. And he didn't see any other cars on the freeway. The object was gone, and he was very, very bothered by this. It's those, again, haunting memories, recurring dreams, disturbing dreams or flashbacks when people come to someone like myself. During the course of hypnosis, of course, he remembered being lifted in a beam of light, and we did several sessions on this because it was very difficult for John to try to articulate what he was experiencing in hypnosis. And during hypnotic regression, as many of you probably know, these individuals relive the experience. But I find that in reliving, in bringing all the memories up to the conscious level, that's when the healing process comes into play, when they can make sense of this finally. But there's an artist depiction when John walked, of course he was escorted into this room. He met with this taller alien, looked like the little grays, that we call them the little grays now, but it's taller, wearing a Dracula type cape. And again, when I started working with these cases, I thought, oh my God, first the tank, and now I'm coming across the Dracula capes, until I started comparing notes and cases with Bud and David Jacobs and John Mack and John Carpenter when we would travel. And these were coming up in the research quite a bit. But this is the one that was waiting for John. John described during several of his sessions sperm samples being taken, as many others do describe. And while I'm being interviewed for television or radio, I really try to keep away from this part of the abduction experience, because as you know, the media likes to sensationalize everything. Well, we're talking about UFOs and contact cases, and so we don't really need to sensationalize them anymore. But this is the artist depiction of many of the cases that I have of the sperm samples being taken. This is some of his transcript when he began. They took him off the table, they escorted him into another room, and he described it as a smaller room. He said it looked very dark in there. He started becoming upset and agitated, and I told him to count to 3, that at the count of 3 he's going to take a quick look at what he's being shown, because he kept saying, I'm being shown something. I don't want to see it. I don't know what I'm looking at. It's not water in the tank. It's heavier. It looks like gelatin. Bubbles running through it. And I just kept talking to him that he's doing fine. I keep describing as we break through some of the blocks. As I mentioned, once again, the healing process begins. And at this point, John is extremely emotional, very distraught. And maybe next time I'll bring some of the tapes so that you can hear that. But he's saying, they're telling me that's my child in that tank. And it took about 3 sessions for us to finally, for John to finally look at the tank and describe what they were showing him. I don't want to see it. And I always tell the person I'm going to touch their hand or I'm going to touch their shoulder, so they're not thinking that if I don't tell them what I'm going to be doing, they're going to think it's little alien beings touching them, and I want to make sure they know I'm touching them. And I use a lot of touch in my work, just to let them know that they're safe. And at this point, this is when we finally broke through his block, and he says, "Oh, I see a baby. They're telling me to have feelings for this baby, that it's mine." He's confused, he's crying. He goes, "I don't know if it's mine, but they're telling me to love it." And he felt bad because he said, "This is just a baby." He goes, "I guess I love it." And then he asked me, "Can I please come out?" Which a person does have that ability to do. You're not unconscious, you're not drugged, you can, you're talking, and please, I don't want to go on. This is John's drawing of he's standing between the two alien beings, and he's looking up. He said he was looking up at the tanks. They were up about 6 feet above his head. And he described it, they were along a concave wall. There were many of these tanks, but he was told, and this one particular one was lit up, and he was told to look at this particular one. This is the artist's depiction of the tanks and the one that was being shown to him. I also have the case of Alfonso. This particular drawing was from an experience he had when he was a teenager. He went out to the backyard. Those were in the days, before clothes dryers were really popular. And his job was to hang the family laundry out on the lines. Had a big basket of clothes, and he went out, and he said he noticed a bright light above him, and he couldn't see, he didn't know what it was, and the next thing he knew, he was running into his house, and his family, "Where were you? Why are you coming in so late? Did you hang the clothes?" Later on, he discovered that it was an hour or two, I don't recall completely exactly the time, but it was an hour or so later. He went out to the backyard to see if he hung the clothes. He said, but the clothes were in the basket, and when you've had clothes where you've left them wet somewhere, and some of them are semi-dry, but he lifted them up, of course they're all wrinkled, and he knew that something very strange. He said, he couldn't explain it, he didn't know what to tell his family, but of course they were mad at him. His mother was upset with him for not hanging the clothes. So after this one session, he drew this picture of an alien being that had approached him, and to the right you'll see an instrument that he said looked like a clarinet, but he said the alien being touched him with this, and he couldn't move. And to the left here, on the other side, is the orb that Alfonso described, that this alien being was holding this orb, and it was almost emitting energy, and it would get bigger and smaller, so he drew that. This was from an experience that Alfonso had in 1948. This was an instrument that he drew with a very long needle-like instrument with a tiny BB-like object at the end of it. And if you could tell, he drew the top of his head, and this needle, he said, they inserted it in the top of the head. Now, I have many cases, of course, of head procedures, right ear, left ear, behind the neck, and my colleague and friend Roger Lear was talking to you about implants, and we feel that this has something to do with some of these implants that we've been finding, and I have a case here that I want to share with you, of course. But this is one of the instruments, and Alfonso also described that I wanted to share with you, and I know you've heard Jim Sparks, his lecture, and I read his book, and he talks about being in a class type of situation, learning things. Well, Alfonso is one of the cases I have where he has felt many times that he's in a classroom or school setting. And this was one of them, one of the experience he had when he described, I asked him to describe the room he was in. He described 6 weird chairs. I'm told to sit in the chair and there's a screen of some kind. I think it's like a schoolroom to me. I asked him if there was anything on the screen. He described some geometric shapes, he says, like in 3D. And he says, I put my hand in the thing, and he's talking about in the screen, and it lit up. It has energy close to my body. How weird. I'm supposed to do something with this energy, but I don't know what it is. And during this school type of setting, and he gets very emotional when we have done sessions on this, he says, it's so hard to explain. I know that something is going to happen in the future. Of course, I ask him, what is going to happen? What are you feeling? What are you sensing? Or what are you being told? He said, something big. It's going to affect the whole world. I think they have been looking for certain people. I know certain people are being chosen. Sounds crazy, but I think they're coming to take part of the people all over the world. Now, when he had this experience, this was the same experience he had with the needle going into his head. He was about 7, 8 years old. And he said, he described it one time during the session that he says, I feel like I know a lot, I have a lot of information, but I'm in this small body. And I asked him how they're choosing people. He says they test them. They look for certain qualities, and when the time comes, they take those that are ready, and those that aren't, they're lost, and it's something to do with cosmic. That's the way things are. They are trying to show me things and becoming very upset because he doesn't understand what's being shown to him. And of course, I'm still talking to him, trying to calm him down, and very emotional. He says, they're showing me the earth. It's going to go into gigantic earthquakes, tidal waves, volcanoes are going to go off. It's going to be horrible, and he's crying. The whole world as we know it is going to be different. The land, continents, everything. Once it settles down, it's going to take hundreds of thousands of years, and when it settles back down, it will be real beautiful. It will be real different, like a paradise. They are showing me land, more land mass, more tropical jungles, more forests, more land and less water. And he's crying. He says, please, I want to stop now. And in the course of my work, and this is why I've had Steve Neal, the artist, draw from a compilation of some of my cases that people are being shown, could be any city underwater, floods, terrible floods, tsunamis. Many people report being shown tsunamis or being told this is what's going to happen. The explosions, the earth explosion, just horrible devastation. This is what Alfonso was experiencing during this one session. Okay, I'd like to show the clip of the encounter show, please. And this will show the double abduction of 2 brothers, Jesse and John Long. And I want to share that with you. But it's a very...
The debate over UFO abductions continues, but the believers, and there are millions, are convinced that these experiences really happened. Reporter Linda Delaray recently investigated one of the most interesting cases we have ever encountered.
John, most of these cases are individual episodes, and that makes validation difficult. But our next story is the account of what may be a dual abduction, and that means it could be twice as credible.
Oh my God.
A few years ago, Hollywood script supervisor Jess Long decided he had had enough. He was convinced he'd been repeatedly abducted, and he knew if he didn't get help soon, he'd go insane.
It finally got to the point where I needed to know was this real? Was this really happening to me? I wasn't ready to accept the fact that I was being abducted by aliens.
Jess found help in hypnotherapist Yvonne Smith.
He will wake up sometimes with a mark on his body, and we'll see a triangular shaped bruise. He will not remember what happened the night before. It'll be totally black for him.
Have you actually seen these marks yourself?
I have seen several marks on Jesse, and he does have pictures of his marks. He keeps very meticulous records.
They're always a little different, but usually triangular in shape, scratches, claw marks, just all kinds of strange marks that I can't explain.
Through regression therapy, Yvonne Smith was able to trace Jess's initial encounter back to a single day in 1957.
John, Jesse's brother, when he was 4 years old, and Jesse was 5, they were playing in the sandbox in the backyard at their parents' house in Rogersville, Tennessee. They both remembered a man standing up on top of a hill that was behind the house.
For some reason, I took my brother's hand and I led him up the hill. And as we came over the crest of the hill, we came up on what appeared to be a round house with small beings working around the house.
Their memory stops there. And for years and years and years, it bothered Jesse. And of course, we went through regression with him, and a whole abduction scenario came out. He was taken in by 3 alien beings into the UFO.
There's an obvious question. Did Jess's brother have any recollections of the encounter? Reluctantly, John Long agreed to a hypnosis session. Jess's brother John always wanted to build a round house, but it wasn't until his regression that he realized the home of his dreams may be more than just an architectural whim.
In growing up, John always said he was going to design and build his own house, and it was going to be a round house. And then when I finally saw it for the first time, there was a memory that came back, which just sent a chill over my body to realize that he built this round house, which is very much the shape and size of the craft we saw.
That wasn't all that came out. Under hypnosis, John also recalled the strange appearance of one of the aliens.
Just describe what he looks like.
His big eyes, and he looks like a praying mantis.
There were like 3 or 4 dark, small figures with my brother. And then the one that was with me was the one that looked like a praying mantis.
Many people describe a taller, thin, spindly-looking alien being with large dark eyes, and they will describe it as an insect, as a praying mantis, as a grasshopper.
Strangely enough, 11 years before his regression, John had a compulsion to build a praying mantis. He now admits that there is a striking resemblance to the being he encountered as a child. A house like a spacecraft, an alien sculpture. These alone might seem evidence enough of John's abduction, yet there was one more surprise in store during his regression.
He remembered during the course of this hypnosis session that his left ear was stinging, and he reached up and touched his ear. And I said, "What's wrong with your ear?"
It's like a bee sting.
Where do you feel the bee sting?
It's behind my ear.
After that session, John had me feel the back of his left earlobe, and behind his ear, I felt something. It felt round. It was right under the skin.
And John's brother also had what seemed to be some sort of an implant.
I came away with from that encounter with an unusual object in my leg, which is basically a crystal. It was in my leg for 34 years.
Jess had the object surgically removed and then sent it to a lab for analysis.
It has minerals in it and metals. It has zinc and magnesium and silver and some other elements. And when you look at it under a microscope, it takes on a honeycombed effect.
For Jess Long, the nightmare is ongoing. And the experience has impacted his brother's life in other strange ways.
Before my brother even started talking about any of this openly to anybody, I had already, designed my house, and I had already done this praying mantis in the garage. This was a one-time thing for me, but for him, this has happened throughout his life.
We still don't have the answers. I mean, I'm grateful that they didn't continue abducting John, but I would like to know, why did they continue abducting me?
Jesse Long is certainly not the only person who wonders what's going on. The mystery surrounding these alleged abductions shows no sign of being unraveled.
Again, it's important to remember that the vast majority of these abductees seek no publicity and aren't paid for telling their story. In fact, most would never have come forward if it weren't for a desperate need to begin the healing process.
Thank you, Linda. Encounters will be right back.
Thank you. So that's one of the cases of double abduction that I have, and I wanted to share something very interesting with you. When I went back to visit the brothers in the summer of 2006, I sat with John and I recorded an interview with him. But prior to that, Jesse, his brother, had he called me and says, "You're not going to believe what John's been doing lately. He's been coming up with all these different inventions." And at the time I went to visit them in 2006, he'd had about 6 patents that were pending for his inventions. And one of them, he told me one of them, and I'm going to read from part of his interview, he had invented a magnetic eccentric drive. And he says, he showed me the patents, and I'm going through this because I just wanted to show you. This is everything. This is the house that John drew. It was after his hypnosis session, because they both described a house that was being built, conscious memory, but of course, later on, it turned out to be a UFO that they were taken into. So that was John's drawing after his hypnosis session. That's John's drawing of his praying mantis being that was with him, very tall. I covered this in great detail in the book, and there's the X-ray. And just wanted to share, because when I went to, there's his abstracts, but he gave me 6 of them during the time I was there to show me what he's been inventing. He said the one invention he has is magnetic eccentric drive. And he said, this is John, unusual thing about the last pending application. I have been denied permission by the USPTO to file worldwide application on this one for a period of at least 6 months as government officials review and decide whether or not to issue an order of secrecy. If I receive such an order, I will be required to tell them who I have shown the device to. The device applies to satellites, space probes, and surveillance craft. And then he looked at me and he said, odd for a guy like myself who only graduated from high school. So he's coming up with inventions all the time, and since I'm running out of time here, I have, as I mentioned, these are the cases that I've covered in the book. I have more detail about the 2 brothers. But on Jesse's, on his object that was removed, we can do further analysis on the object, but the scientist told Jesse that they would have to completely destroy it and do the further analysis, which Jesse at this point in time is not ready to do that. So we're just hanging on to the information, and of course I'm getting more cases, and Dr. Roger Lear and I have been working together. I only have a few minutes left, but I wanted to quickly, we've been talking about human-looking aliens, and we feel that they could be the perfected hybrids that could be among us, that are walking among us, that are here. Now, I have a case of, and I've had this type of man and woman. In Alfonso's case, he described it. In many other cases, they've been described. In the Travis Walton case, they've been described very tall, very human-looking, very perfect-looking. Now, statistically, the case, the last chapter in my book is meaningless at this point statistically. However, I think this might be in the direction where we're going in this research, because I'm getting more and more reports of people feeling that they may have met a human alien or a hybrid, or whatever term we want to call them. But this woman, in fact, she was a very, very close friend of my mother's. Back in the 60s, I believe it was the early 60s, she ran across and she came across a very tall, 6 foot tall, blonde hair, very clean cut. She said he was very clean cut, very neat looking. And she said, he came in and sat down at my table and I was having coffee, but there were other tables around. And she felt that when he looked at her, he looked right through her, and he practically read her mind. He said, "You're thinking of someone." And she said it wasn't that he was threatening, it wasn't that he was trying to, hit on her, but she said it was the way he looked at me. And this was a predominantly Hispanic area. So a 6 foot tall, blonde hair person walking around that area, would stand out. That's why she said, I've never seen him before, but she ran out of the restaurant and she called her boss and she said, "Oh my God, you've got to get here." And she has told the same story all these years. And I interviewed her for the book, and I said, "Do you mind, Rita, if I use your case?" Because at the time, I was very young, and she told my mother about this. Well, I wasn't in UFO research, but now with all the cases that we have been coming across, I even called my mother and I said, "Oh my God, I think Rita may have come across a hybrid this was in the 60s. So, but anyway, I wanted to share that with you quickly. I wanted to put it out there because I think this is the direction we're going to. We're over the do UFOs exist, and we're over the sightings. I think we've got to pay attention to these contact cases and experiences. And there is help out there. And I'd love to speak to all of you. I won't have time for questions, but I'll have my table out there, and I'll be here till the end of the conference. And I thank you very much